Welcome to the Empowered Life podcast with Dustin Vaughn Warncke. Join Dustin as your guide to learning about unlocking your life's ultimate potential. Through inspiring conversations with special guests and proven wisdom, Dustin explores the interconnected values of personal growth, professional success, and a wholesome life filled with love and light. This show is based on tactical and practical concepts for life's greatest successes and achieving your goals, while also being full of inspiration to help you live your best life right now. Discover how to cultivate a mindset of empowerment, achieve success, and create a meaningful impact on the world around you, all while living with purpose, meaning, and significance. Dustin is a former associate publisher of Texas Fish and Game magazine, the author of over 10 books, owner of his own digital marketing agency, an outdoor TV show host, a video and podcast producer. And he will also become one of your best friends forever. Now, get ready to get inspired to live in gratitude. Here's your host, Dustin Vaughn Warncke.
Welcome to our podcast, and thank you so much for checking out our show. Thank you so much for watching, reading, and listening to all of the content that I have out there. It's a pleasure to be in front of you, and I have been, thinking about how to best frame this for the perspective of your listening pleasure. Because this has been several years of a beginning of a process that started several years ago, I should say, that has led me to where I am sitting right now. And I won't go into all the kind of gory, dirty details. I don't like to air my dirty laundry out. Nobody cares about your problems. 90% that it said 90% of people don't care about your problems, and the other 10% are glad it's you. Les Brown said that once. I don't know if he's the one that first originated that, but whatever. But bottom line, I begin to think about the best way to frame this story, the way that Yeshua, that Jesus, would have framed it in his day. And actually, he did frame it in his day when he was approached by a very wealthy man, or they just call him a rich man in the Bible. And this is not a religious podcast, as I said many times, but this is just borrowing from a story from a Bible, from the Bible, the New Testament. And really just, I ran through my Bible, looked this up the other day. I was like, this is cool. This is a good way to tell this story. So the rich man approaches Jesus, somewhere in a crowd and said, Rabbi, how do I get to heaven? And Jesus gives him the commandment that you should sell all of your belongings and basically, give to the poor. Those that were and are more in need than you are right now, and follow me. And he couldn't do it. He walked away very disappointed that he could not inherit the kingdom of heaven because he wasn't able to let go of attachment. And really, I study a lot of different world cultures, world religions. I'm very, I have a lot of world knowledge of how other cultures live, what time it is in the Philippines right now, because I've got a developer that works on my team for my business that works over there. His name's Jevin. He's a good dude. But Jevin's one of my developers, and then I've got project managers and everything like that over here in the States, in Texas mainly, that are local to me. So, but I'm always kind of conscious of what's going on in the world. Why, the fact that in the Philippines where Jevin lives, they're poorer than poor. I mean, if you make $500 a month, you're pretty well off in the Philippines because the cost of living is pretty low, but also it's a third world country. It's a big string of islands with millions of people on them. And if you see some of the videos, just pull up on YouTube, Life in the Philippines. You'll see it's all about family and love and in mercy, and very much a family, a connected family unit, a lot because of the Spanish influences, Catholic. Some have some, Pacific Islander or, Southeast Asian religion influences. But overall, the Filipinos are some of the happiest people I've ever met as a culture. But they're poor. They're so poor. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of like the first time a friend of mine told me that he visited a ministry in Haiti. He said the poverty is almost unexplainable. Haiti being on the other side of the Dominican Republic, I should say. I'm sorry, I'm speaking too fast. is very, the Dominican Republic is not, necessarily a first class country, but the other side, Port-au-Prince and all that stuff with the Haiti, the refugees, all the stuff that goes on with over there, as far as like, the storms they get hit with and that kind of stuff. These people barely have a straw tent, that they sleep under every night. And that brings me to this point, okay? So Jesus basically tells the guy, well, this is the way to do it. And the context of what he was really saying, and this is not turning into a sermon, don't worry. What he was trying to say in the context of the time is let go of your worldly possessions and follow the treasures that you store up in heaven. And that kind of inspired me back when I first heard that as a little boy and everything like that. And the journey of the last 3 years has been very hard on me. Some of you guys have known, I've kind of hinted around there about some of the struggles and triumphs that I have been through throughout the history since the show started airing. But I mean, really, if you think about life and the way that life throws you curveballs, and sometimes if you don't learn the lesson the first time, life, God, the higher power that you serve will teach you again until you learn the lesson. We are here to do two primary things in this physical existence, in my opinion, and most of you have heard me, have listened to my other shows. We're here to learn to love and care about each other, and we're here to acquire knowledge. Okay? How are you doing on both of those, first of all? All right, good little self-reflection question on that. The other thing is that we are, it goes back to the fact of the great equalizer, which is death. One day, you're not going to be here. One day, you are going to leave everything that you've got stacked up to somebody else to go through. And they're going to have to go through it eventually. It's not just going to sit in a storage unit forever, okay? I'm trying to talk about living more intentionally and leaving a legacy, which is something I have made the personal choice decision and executed upon that decision to be able to be where I'm talking to you about this now. So this has been a lot of formulated in my mind. How do I want to, participate with you, the audience, my buddies, your best friend forever, Dustin here, telling you guys, some of you guys that know me, some of you guys that don't, of how this all came to be. So I went through a divorce, 2023. It was due to two financial scams, okay, that I got involved in early on before pig butchering and romance scams and all these other things came about, and that kind of stuff. So I was just in a regular, cryptocurrency platform I thought I was safe in. Turns out I was being catfished by a friend of mine, not a romantic thing while I was married and that kind of thing, but I thought it was a friend of mine that got me into this, and then I couldn't get out. And then I went through and did something else, and again, I didn't think I would talk about this today, but I hired a recovery person that I thought I could trust, and it just cost me more money until like you're barely getting by. And now I'm finally realizing all the mistakes that I made are not as bad as some of it could always be worse, okay? God never let me down. I'm the walking, talking testimony of grace for what I went through. But part of when the divorce had, started the proceedings and I was served papers and everything like that, because my Jackson's mom just it was a marriage that wasn't necessarily the best in the first place, and everybody that saw that would know that. So I nothing bad against her. Just we grew apart. And had different goals in mind for how we wanted to live our lives. So you guys know me; I'm a go-getter. I'm that doesn't match for everybody. I'm not for everybody. That's the truth when it comes to romantic relationships or otherwise. I'm for some, but I'm not for everyone. I go out and I'm die hard, and I hustle. But I've started to, see some of the effects that causes sometimes when you do it too long term. Stress is a big killer, they always say, and I backed away from, doing as much of that kind of stuff. And then I started, kind of like reflecting, okay? I made the decision in late January of this year. I'm recording this in June of 2025. So January was late this year. And I'm sorry, early this year. That was earlier this year. So I guess about, 5 months ago or whatever. I decided to move out here. I found a guy on Craigslist, had these little kind of tiny, Jackson calls them tiny home cottages, okay? These are like little converted travel trailers that have been converted into tiny spaces. And I have 2 bedrooms and a bath. I've got a nice living area. I got 3 TVs, big screen TVs. So, all the streaming entertainment you could actually want in the bedroom, the living room, or the other bedroom. So Jackson has a place to play his Xbox when he comes over and visits. And it's actually very cathartic and therapeutic to talk about this right now. But I made that choice to be closer to Jackson because he was having some struggles emotionally with some issues that we have dealt with in the past when we were married and we're a family unit. And as far as I'm considered, me being 15 minutes away from them in the outskirts of Leander in the middle of nowhere out here, I love it. I wanted 2 things before I left my former home. I wanted to be out in the country. The suburban life. I never lived in, I lived in Austin for like Austin, South Austin, like in the city, maybe, for a year, when, my ex-wife and I got married, and it just, everything's close by. That's great. You can go get, a burger and whatever delivered to you, whatever. You can still get delivery out here in the country, but we moved to the suburbs of Leander, which is just northwest of Austin. And then I moved up to Temple with some family for a couple of years. I'm not afraid to admit that to you guys. I didn't want to be alone. It didn't really have so much to do with the finances. It just had to do with emotional support, which my mom and stepfather were great at. And so helped them with a bunch of things. They miss me a lot, I'm pretty sure, now that I've left. But and they've told me that too. They're just like, oh, we got all these, they just build up a stack of things for me to take care of that I normally was there all the time for, and I love living with them. It's great to kind of be together again after not being together after I was married all that time. So kind of homecoming, if you will. They had a bedroom for me and everything, and it was great. But it didn't feel right because it wasn't like my space, My stuff was in storage. That comes to the building of storage, okay? The subject of storage. So before the divorce went finalized, I kind of was like, well, I find me a storage unit. It got me like a 10 by 10 outdoor storage unit. It's kind of in a row, kind of outdoor, indoor. But either way, it faced the indoors and kind of a corridor, but it wasn't air conditioned or climate controlled or anything like that. But it was fairly cool in there. And that kind of got filled up when I kept on getting furniture and that kind of stuff. I guess it was or maybe December of 2023, January 2024. I finally got the rest of my stuff out of the old house. And just kind of set it there and let, just kind of transitional part, find myself, find what's going on, reassess the situation. What do I want? And more importantly, what do I not want in future relationships? What I own, who I am. Okay. Because there's 2 things that you develop as a person, especially through hardships. But there's 2 things that life will try to teach you. And only really the people that are paying attention are going to learn them. And that's character and that's integrity. All right. So you may say, well, geez, Dustin, you live in a tiny home or formerly permanently affixed here now. It's got a shelter built around it to protect it from the weather. But it's kind of like a little RV park out here. There's just a few of us, and we're a little tight community. I'm not gonna say commune, but we're a tight little, kind of like a little KOA campground. There's some people, especially in their older years, they do nothing but RV and travel trailers and fifth wheels and campers and all that stuff all over the United States until they go into a nursing home. They sell their house and they just travel all the time, And that's kind of one of the things I thought, if I lived that old, that might be kind of cool. But I wanted to live tiny and I wanted to live out in the country. Those are the 2 things I prayed for. Those are the 2 things that I asked God to bring me, and God manifested both. Because I'm out in the country, about 15 minutes away from town. We have kind of our roadside Goodwill out here. I'm sure plenty of people had garage sales with some of the stuff I gave away. I'm not saying anything about Goodwill, but there are certain things they don't take, and it's just kind of like, oh man, but the people out here, in this area, whether they're rich or poor, they like to pick it up and throw it in their garage sale. I don't care. They can profit off of whatever I leave out there. I'm done, So we go to the section where I'm moving from the 10 by 10 into the 10 by 20, I guess a couple of years ago at this point, maybe a year and a half ago. And then I look at all the stuff that's left. One of the times I went there with Jackson to pick up a couple of things, I looked at everything and I was like, well, man, I started doing some calculating on some of the furniture and stuff that I had taken from my old house. That's not for me. I'm not running into, from the frying pan into the fire, although we tend to do that sometimes in situations like this. But I was like, this stuff is just a big cluttered mess in the storage unit. And I want simplicity. I want peace of mind. I want to find my inner peace. Because like I've told you guys before, if it costs you your peace, it is too darn expensive, okay? If it costs you your inner peace, your sanctity, the places that make you feel safe and whole in this physical lifetime, okay? Your connection to God, if it gets in the way of your worship and your praise of your higher power, it's too expensive. If it costs you your peace, it's not worth it. And all this stuff was causing me, $240 a month, for the storage. And I bet all the stuff in that storage unit wasn't worth $240, okay? Everything combined together, if they were to auction the whole thing off, okay? So one day I finally changed some plans, and I finally, I just had a car accident, another one. I know you guys heard about the one I got back in May of 2024. Well, I got in another one where I hydroplaned, and I slammed against two different guardrails on opposite sides of the road, so you can tell how that went. I spun around a couple of times. I felt like Evil Knievel in the demolition derby, but I walked away from it, felt okay, and a little soreness in my back and muscles and everything like that. But I didn't really seek treatment right away, and so then I went, I got to go rent this truck, and so I rented this truck, got everything moved in there, and I'm sitting there looking at this Penske truck that I rented from, I guess, Home Depot or whatever, right? And it's already late. And I'm going to drive this to Llano, to one of the ranches I talk about every once in a while on my other podcast. Because, the gal there, the landowner there, she has, some things to furnish as far as, like, her place. She has a tiny home out there. And then she has some yurts, which are kind of like these giant base camp tents, like from kind of the Mongolian era, or the Mongolian region, as far as like kind of like if you were hiking Mount Everest, you'd stay in a yurt because it has a queen size bed. It's just a giant tent. And so anyway, that was cool. So she setting up two new yurts and needed some bedding for that. And I was just like, okay. And so she wanted me to put it in a Connex, and I was like, no, I just, because the thing that she said after that is watch for snakes. And it's the middle of the night. I've got my flashlights. I always got plenty of flashlights with me. But I'm like, nah, I'm not even going to approach snakes. So I just kind of loaded everything off. It wasn't raining. It was a little dusty. I just kind of put everything in the center and let her ranch managers, kind of take care of that stuff. And but after I loaded the vehicle, I looked at it and I said, you know what? Everything burns up. If this truck for some reason spontaneously combusts into flames and the whole thing burns in the ground, like burns to the ground for like, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds, I haven't lost much. I haven't lost anything. I let go. That was part of the process that I'm trying to convey to you, that was helpful for me, that might be helpful for you. Because most of us in the consumer lifestyle, our average homes, I think from the show that I'm going to mention here in a minute, The Minimalist, with Ryan Nicodemus and Joshua Fields Milburn, they have a Patreon. It's like $5. I pay every $5 a month or whatever to get their 3-hour show every week. It's hilarious. They talk about the meaning of life and less is more and those kind of things as far as like stuff goes. But the average household has around 300,000, or no, maybe it's 30,000 items in the house. I'm talking about things you can pick up, things that are not bolted on, okay? Let's just say 300,000, items in an average house. We're talking about silverware, all the way up to, all that stuff from your elementary school papers that are 40 years old, whatever the case may be. And so I was just kind of like, I want less. Everybody else around me is, the one that's running towards Amazon, the consumerism culture, and the fact that Christmas is the only time that companies ever really make money. That's why they call it Black Friday, because they're in the red the rest of the year. I mean, it's turned into a consumerist machine, and I'm not anti-capitalist. I very much believe in capitalism. I run a business, on my own, by myself most of the time. I know, I understand. I totally get it. But, I mean, what's it worth? Think about after you're gone. A friend of mine had her mom passed away, left her just so much stuff, man. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of clutter that was in this house when I went and visited back after her mom passed away. And I sent her a meme, something I found on Facebook a while back around that time. I guess this was kind of just post pandemic, as we were coming out of the COVID pandemic, and I said, hey, I got to show you this, and it's this picture. I'll try to put it in the show notes if you want to go to dustinspodcast.com and you can see it there, because I don't think it goes when it syndicates to the other platforms, but the images don't show. But it's a cartoon, I guess, of an old man on a walker and his son sitting next to him, or standing next to him, and they're just open the garage, okay? And the dad looks at his son in the next scene, and he says, "Son, one day all of this will be yours." And we're talking about a garage that is packed from the floor to the ceiling, full of junk, full of something that was useful at one time and probably should have ended up in next year's garage sale. All right. What I'm trying to train myself, because I'm the worst one of all of you guys. I love to go shopping on Amazon. In fact, I'm going to probably record a couple of videos of how to get the best deals and the best values on Amazon, or eBay or whatever, as far as sorting and filtering and that kind of stuff, and just drilling down to exactly what the best deals are on there. So yeah, that's one thing that my landlord out here has told me. He's just like, "Oh my goodness, Dustin, you get more Amazon packages." And they're little bitty things that come from different warehouses. It's not the end of the world, but he was still like, "My gosh, you've got so much, so many packages coming." But again, it's all intentional at this point, because I just finished all of my stuff. That's why I'm recording this podcast, to celebrate with you guys that I'm free. When it comes to, maybe not for everything, I got to work, I got to pay bills and stuff, but when it comes to the stuff, I'm free. And I'm not saying go sell your favorite stuff, but when you hold an item into your hand, I know you can't do this with all 300,000 or 30,000 or whatever items in your household, but hold an item in your hand and just be intentional with asking the question, does this item add value to my life? And if it does, what value does it add? See, most of us don't go do that. Most of us just kind of like, whatever the wind blows, that's what we go. We just go, and oh, this looks good. And then we're sold. I mean, social media has changed the way that we buy. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. But we have these influencers that are saying, buy this, or wear this, or put this on your skin, or whatever. And then we've got these sports stars that turn into influencers after their sports careers, And, if they hit a ball, or catch a ball, or throw a ball, or a football, or a basketball, or a basketball, or whatever, all of a sudden, they are they are influencers that have massive followings. And, again, it's a consumerist machine that keeps on going and going and going. So I go back to the George Carlin, one of my favorite comedians of the past. He died, I think, in 2007, and I'll never forget. I really have loved his stuff all the way through even high school, when I was like old enough to watch his stuff, because it is a little bit spicy, if you know what I mean. There are some bad words and some adult content in there. In his spoken word, but he's very blunt, very to the point, and doesn't believe in any BS. And so he said early on, I guess back in the 70s, a house is really just a giant box with a roof on it with your stuff inside. And when you go up in the plane, and you look down, there's everybody's little box of stuff. Okay, and then he goes on and makes a whole point of if you travel, you're bringing a smaller version of your stuff, and then if you go somewhere else to see somebody else on another island, let's say you're in Hawaii, and then that friend has another friend that wants to go see you on another island of Hawaii, and in the Hawaii area, with the different islands that are out there, your supply lines are pretty thin at that point, and you have smaller and smaller and smaller versions of your stuff that you think you need, and you never feel comfortable in somebody else's home, because their stuff is on the vanity and your stuff is in your bag. You never feel comfortable staying with somebody else because it's not your stuff. It's not your place. So I think that's part of our humanity as far as civilization goes and how we've evolved. I just think that we're a little bit in an excessive mode of consumerism, where we're filling up our houses to the points to where we have the hoarders, the people that, that gather all this stuff, and it's just all cluttered, and it's unorganized chaos. I know a lot of people say, well, I walk into their house and they say, it's a mess, it's organized chaos. No, it's not. There's no such thing as chaos that's organized, okay? If it's chaos, it's unorganized, all right? That's just going to be the hill that I'm going to stand on right now and get off my soapbox in a minute. But the bottom line is that you've got to let go. Just think about a fist. You're holding on to all this stuff. And then when you open up your hand so stuff can flow in and stuff can flow out, stuff that gives you value, you give, you hold on to, okay, loosely. And then stuff that doesn't add value to your life, you give it away, or you sell it, or you repurpose it, or free cycle it, or whatever the case may be. Lots of Facebook groups about free cycling, other places on Craigslist and stuff like that where you can just give it away for free for somebody that may use it at a garage sale, may use it for themselves. It may be worthless, it may be outdated technology or whatever, especially some of our phones and electronics and that kind of stuff. But a lot of stuff's worth something. Some stuff's worth nothing. On different pawn shops I've gone to over the years, just try to see what something's worth, and they're like, oh, about half of, nothing, So I'm just kind of like, well, what's it really worth? And is it sacrificing my peace? And I've inspired folks like my mom and stepdad, Mom and Michael. They used to, they're perfect examples of this society that most of the households in America look like. The closets are full, and then the little floor space in the closet is full and stacked up about halfway, to your waist with other stuff, And now that my stuff's out of there, they have no excuse to, it's all that's left is theirs, for the time that I lived there. And I was just like, okay. But I inspired them to go through one of their closets the other day and at least take the first step of, we're never going to wear this again. These sizes don't fit me anymore because I've lost weight, and I'm dealing with the same thing. And in fact, whenever we make a choice like this and you make it out of conviction, not out of guilt or shame or fear, okay? I'm going to talk about that on another show, okay? When you look at the items in your life and you go through them, and I've got a pile still in Jackson's room right now in my little tiny home here that I still need to go through. But lo and behold, the whole idea is that it's already been sorted through. I'm keeping that stuff. It's just where am I going to keep it and organizing it? And I don't mean to just organize everything, because things can get out of order pretty quick. You could hire somebody to come in. In fact, there's one gal that I networked with a while. That's all she did. I'd go to networking coffee like Panera Bread. We'd have a networking meeting, and we'd kind of introduce ourselves and everything. In fact, I need to see if that group is still together. Side note, mental note, but anyway, now that I moved back to the area, but that's all she would do. She'd go around, and then she would tell some of the women, especially, that I can't do the dishes. I just can't get over to it. She said, just do one dish, and like just the Chinese proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with what? The first step, and and that's what it was for me, but I moved a little bit quicker because I know I take things to extremes sometimes. This doesn't just apply to your stuff. Being a minimalist also believes in that culture believes in, okay, a tiny home, less stuff, less is more, and then looking at the experiences in life. That you have the freedom to go do things because you don't have a giant house anymore to take care of. You don't have all this stuff you have to insure. You know what I'm talking about. You have to pay renter's insurance, not only for your house. If you rent, I got a really good deal on where I'm at right now on renter's insurance through my car insurance place. But, you got renter's insurance on your property, just whatever you live around. But then at the storage unit place, at least at where I went, it was life storage and then it became extra space. Got to pay a rental. I mean, I think in both cases, you had to pay insurance of like, I don't know, $15-20 a month, to insure all that crap that's in there that you're not going to do anything with. And I'm telling you, 3/4 of that stuff, especially all the big things, they went out to my buddy Maggie's at the ranch between Llano and Fredericksburg. They went, that's where they ended up, and that's where they're going to stay. Some of this stuff, a little bit, older antique stuff, whatever, I'm not interested in it anymore. It does not serve a purpose for me or a value. Yes, some of it's hand-me-downs, that kind of stuff. At least I know where it is. It's not going to leave that property. I'm pretty sure about that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I kept my grandmother's and my grandfather's, at least my paternal side, or my maternal side, I should say, my mom's side, her parents' stuff, because I was almost like a second child to my grandmother. I was so close to her. And then my grandfather died when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and around the time my parents got a divorce. And he was a stonemason, and he had his old drill. He has, things that I really wanted to hang on to. His old trowel. He did, concrete work and mortar and all this stuff when he was doing the. He was, mortaring these rocks, and there's still existences of all of his work, all of his beautiful stonemasonry throughout New Braunfels, where I grew up. I mean, the church that I attended back in high school and middle school, and visited since then a few times here and there. That was his rock work. I mean, that was really good rock work. And so it really, again, those items, yes, I cherish those items and remember him by. But not everything. You can't hold on to everything. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, my grandmother, okay, Oma, which is the German word for grandma. Opa, the German name for grandpa, if you didn't know. I always assume everybody knows that because I grew up in a German settled town. But, Oma and Opa, lived during the Depression. They lived, they got married around the end of the Depression. Before everything started bouncing back, 1939, and they had my mom when my grandfather Opa was 45 years old. My grandmother Oma was 35 years old. I don't know if that was planned. I don't know. But either way, the whole thing is like I have their silverware. I got their pots and pans. I get to cook on the stuff that they made these delicious meals for me back when I was a little boy, and that's more of meaning to me of the things that I keep. It's not just about out with the old, in with the new. No, hold on to those heirlooms, okay? But realize that all the crap that you have, all the junk that we all collect, and we're all guilty of it, I'm pretty sure, unless you already are a minimalist of sorts, it's not worth anything. Especially when you're gone. Nobody's going to care about it like you do. So enjoy it while you have it. I was talking to my dad the other day, and, there's a gal that I work with, one of my consulting gigs that I'm doing right now in Austin. There's another podcast I'm recording the subject of it's only as old as yesterday. She's very much a forgive and forget kind of person. She's moved on. She doesn't hold grudges, and I really don't either. I think it has to do with our sign of maturity and age and that kind of stuff, but also the fact that a lot of people think it's because of our birth month or whatever. I'm a Taurus and so on and so forth. So, but either way, we don't hold grudges. We remember, but we forgive and forget. Which is one thing that I teach about a lot on this. But she would always tell me like there's no hearse going to be, towing a U-Haul, and that's so true. It's a cliche thing. But it's something that we joke around about, but we really don't think about, I think. We don't think about the fact that that one day you won't be here and somebody else is going to own your stuff in 100 years, okay? Could be your great-great-grandchildren. I don't know, okay? It could be somebody at the Goodwill that needed that coat, okay? That you held on to and never wore for the rest of your life, all right? I'm just giving you some perspective. Because back to the parable that I started with, Jesus was telling this rich man, sell all you got and follow me. And he couldn't do it because he couldn't let go. See, in Buddhism and a lot of the other Eastern religions, the whole thought is that nirvana, which is what they consider the afterlife, or the Pure Land, if you're on the Buddhist side, the Pure Land, Buddhists believe in that kind of form of heaven. But what that really means... And the Pali word is in Sanskrit. It was Pali before it became Sanskrit, but Pali is a very ancient language from the Indian area. I'm talking about over there in the Far East, that India, and it's about dukkha, grasping. Okay, and that's where we get the hungry ghost from. I talked about the hungry ghost before in my books and that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if I mentioned it much on the podcast, but. Just think of a hungry ghost as a figure that has a giant head with a giant mouth, like a straw pencil-sized neck, and then a giant stomach. You can never satisfy. The food can't get to the stomach and fill it fast enough. That's the microcosm of what we are as a society now, especially in the Western culture. Now, I know this podcast is heard all over the world, but what I'm saying, 1 billion people slept on the dirt floor last night, all right? It may be somebody listening to this podcast. They can testify to that. 1 billion people have food security. I'm talking about the 7 billion people in the world, okay, totally. There are people on our streets that could use that coat that you're not taking care of. I mean, again, what is it worth to you, and are you going to use it? Clothing, especially. Okay, I'm not saying that you know whatever you feel about Goodwill or whatever. My folks around here are kind of like set it up on the neighbors. You know, everybody needs help out here. You know, kind of like it's not a poor area out here because we have kind of you know all walks and shapes and sizes of people that live out here. Across from me is like a giant McMansion. You know, and I live behind a home, you know, in a tiny home. So I mean, it works out. But the whole idea is that, you know, for me, this is great. I'm going to probably be here for a while, I think. I don't necessarily really want a big house to take care of and clean and all that stuff. I liked downsizing. It was freedom for me. It may not be freedom for you, but the problem probably is in your heart that you can't separate yourself from the things that you think matter to you. And really only a few do. And they aren't material. They're spiritual, but they're not necessarily material. And so that's things like it's kind of like the old Alan Jackson song. Okay, the older I get, you can look this up on YouTube or your Spotify, wherever you listen to music, if you even listen to music mobily or wherever. But the song is called, by the way, sidetrack. I miss the days of Sam Goody and Hastings and those kind of stores, those chain stores that are around, especially in this part of Texas, where you could go to the mall or go to the, you know, the resale store where they sold records and tapes and CDs and that kind of stuff. You could actually get the CD opened and you could sit there and spin that baby on a CD player and you listen. You could preview it. That's how you preview it. Now you've got like a 15-second preview on iTunes or, you know, Apple Music or Google Play or whatever. It's just totally changed. I miss the days of listening to the CDs in the store. That's the only way you can go hear the music to decide if you wanted to buy the album or not. Anyway, all right, sidetrack over. Back off my soapbox. I'm just saying it's all about releasing, okay? Releasing. Spreading out what you have to help somebody else. Kindness, okay? And that's the thing. The Alan Jackson song, the Alan Jackson song, The Older I Get, if they find the fountain of youth, I'll never take a drop. And that's the truth. Funny how it is, and I forget all the lyrics of it, but basically he talks about, you know, the older I get, the more I think it's the people you love, not the money and stuff that make you rich. I've discovered that through self-discovery and experiential discovery. Looking within my heart, I'm not defined by the stuff that I have, by the vehicle I drive. I'm defined of who I am and the Creator who created me. Because at the end of your life, that's all you got. None of this stuff is all going to fade away. In a billion years, everything that is created will one day be destroyed. Okay? In fact, in a billion years, this all may be one big, giant ball of fire. You know, might be a giant magma. You know, because look at the weather we've been having and those kind of things, especially if you follow, you know, the prophetic times that we might be in, that I think we definitely are in. But the thing is, what matters in life? That's the transformative thing and the freedom that it gave me, is that I freed up all this space where I don't have clutter. If things get a little cluttery again, well, I practice on just decluttering that part of where it is and staying organized, because there's less stuff to organize now. It's freeing to live on less, but it is hard to live intentionally long term that way. All right, it's hard not to open that Amazon app and order a bunch of crap that that's just going to end up in next year's garage sale. All right, be intentional, especially with your kids. I've been teaching Jackson this. You know, he's 15. A lot of you guys have been with me or followed me on social media or whatever. You know, through him growing up, and really, it's becoming one of those things where he is starting to discover things for himself that I've tried to teach him before, but thought fell on deaf ears. And you'll notice that if you've ever had a teenager, it'll be like we're sitting down and I show him, you know, a song I listened to back in the 90s. It was alternative rock and everything like that. And he'll act like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll listen to something else. And then he'll like save that in his brain and like it'll be on a Spotify list. And he'll go and rediscover like all this stuff that this artist that I've already discovered. And like he discovers it for his own. And he's grasping that. He's getting that. He's loving the music I expose him to, as far as just listen to a couple of songs and that's it. I'm not talking about we listen to the whole Peter Frampton album, okay, or whatever, okay? But I'm just saying, expose, a little bit of experience, exposure therapy to, some new artists that you may not have heard of, some new songs, and like he becomes a raging fan the next week, and it's cool because I want my child to be intentional with what he buys. I've even taught him value shopping, and I'm going to do another podcast based on how we shop, how to buy, how to search Amazon, all that kind of stuff, how to get the best deal. Because I'm not a cheap guy. A lot of my friends have always said that I'm cheap. I'm really not. I'm always looking for the greatest value for the dollar. Another way, I guess, a slang way of saying that, the best bang for the buck. I don't think I'm any different, and I'll give you a good example of that. Okay, all right. Dump your stuff off at Goodwill. I'm sure you have a load every couple of, 3 months or whatever that goes to the donation pile or whatever. Take out a dollar bill from your wallet or your purse, male or female, and walk into the bathroom and try to flush it down the toilet. You can't do it. Because money has the inherent value that it's worth something, okay? But it doesn't matter because you can't take any of that with you. It's kind of like the podcast I did about they were all in the same water. The rich people, the poor people, like during Harvey and Katrina and Rita and all these other different horrible natural disasters that we've had, where we've had hurricanes and flooding and, the dams break and all this other stuff. And people are just wading out in the water. Well, the bank's underwater at that point. Doesn't matter what money you had in it. And I'll give you another little hint here about the way I believe, and you can take this or leave this. But let's say you want to withdraw $15,000. My dad told me that he went and withdrew a sum the other day. Didn't tell me how much it was. Let's just make up a number, $15,000, okay? And you go into the bank and say, I would like to withdraw $15,000 cash to my bank account. Or from my bank account, in cash. A lot of the times they can't do it. They limit you to $10,000. That's your money. Let's say you have $60,000 in there, and you want to just cash out the account. They'll give you a check. They don't have the cash on hand. It used to be that every dollar was backed by a piece of gold, or by a unit of gold. Okay. And I'm not making this political. I'm just saying that's changed in our life big time with the digitization of the finances. And then you have this cryptocurrency, that we have, which is not evil. A lot of people think that it is. Blockchain, and the way the blockchain works is actually quite efficient. And, for you to send the kind of peer-to-peer like PayPal or Venmo or Cash App or whatever, it basically works the same way. You just basically get somebody's wallet address and you send them an amount of Bitcoin or, XRP or whatever. XRP is a very, very high recommendation, by the way, as far as cryptocurrency goes, from what I understand the trends are saying. But don't take my recommendation. This is not a financial advice show, and none of this advice is, you know what I'm going to say. Disclaimer here, okay? But let's say, the thing is, it all might be, like, that a lot of conspiracy theories believe, a lot, getting tripped up with my words now that I've been talking so much. A lot of conspiracy theorists believe that we might be in what they call a cashless society control grid. And I use this as an anecdotal example. When my son and I go to the bowling alley and want to play arcade games and, skee ball and all the things that are there, there's no cash. You cannot exchange cash for services. You have to go and, over there to a kiosk and feed your cash in there, like an ATM, like, kind of like a grocery store. You like put your cash in the little thing and it sucks it up. And then it puts the money on a card for you digitally. All right. So you always have the card digitally that has your stuff, and you can buy food and drinks and pay for your, tab and all the other stuff with that, play all the games, the bowling, all that stuff. Cash is not allowed at that bowling alley. And that's the first time it really came real to me that everything has changed. But the thing is, what hasn't changed is our desire being in the wrong place. Because, I write about this, and I know I talked about this in another show, but you're going to hear it again. God bless you guys all for listening to me. Thank you. Look, how many people, just seriously for a moment, how many people skip going to church and helping out with, we used to do a thing at Living Water, one of the churches I was a president and then vice president of the council for, small church, kind of a church plant in the area I live in now, even closer to now than I ever did back then. We would make sandwiches. We would call it the Samaritan Sandwich Brigade. This is our little ministry. And I think it carried on after the church closed. The pastor retired, and it just wasn't making it financially. And it's sad. It just didn't really grow organically like it should have. I had so much going on. It was hard for me to do much organic promotion to get more people to be Lutheran, and join the ELCA Lutheran Church, with all, especially there was a lot of controversy and conflict going on at that time too, before it closed. But the bottom line is that we would make sandwiches for the people coming to the free health clinic. That's, long story short, of how that program, I think it was Samaritan Health Ministries. That's where these doctors would volunteer their time and their licenses and everything like that. Nurses would do the same thing. And they would go and volunteer their time to give medical advice and provide medical services to those who didn't have insurance. And all they would do is make 2 types of sandwiches. I think it was like ham and cheese and then peanut butter and jelly, 2 of my favorite kind of sandwiches. And we'd make them together. After church service, rolled out the tables, got out the bread, kind of had a system going on, kind of like a conveyor system of making the sandwiches. And then we would bring them to the people who were waiting, sometime for hours, to seek medical care or dental care or eye care or whatever the case may be that they were there at that clinic for. And this is a local ministry here. You can find one wherever you are, okay, where you can pitch in and help. Or would you prefer to just stay in your jammies and watch Netflix? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a day off and just doing nothing and kind of, just be dead to the world and, kind of in your own space and that kind of stuff. But the meaning and significance is going to come from the actions you do from things that are bigger than yourself. And I talked about that with a podcast I did on my other show with Chester Moore. And I'll probably do I'll definitely do a mashup of different interviews I had on that show. That really were meaningful, that really connected with God and the outdoors and my spiritual walk and my walk as a conservationist and all the things that I do in outdoor media and serve the people I serve in outdoor media. You can't take any of it with you. Don't leave your kids or whoever is surviving you a whole garage full of stuff, okay? Get rid of it now. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to do what I did and, after a divorce, go be a minimalist. But I'm telling you, for me, it worked, okay? And again, I'm not for everyone, all right? I am the way that I live is not for everyone. A lot of people would probably like to have a whole lot more. So I tell you what, we're going to do another show here in the near future. And it's just going to be me again. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Please like, share, subscribe, send to a friend, follow, whatever, however these podcast things work, okay? I'm not your dad. I can't tell you what to do. But I'm just having fun doing this and being able to relate to you and, whoever's listening to this. I want to personally connect with you. Feel free to text me. My phone number is 512-497-7674. I get a lot of unsolicited texts from people trying to sell me stuff and everything like that. I'm like immune to it. Just tell me that you heard the podcast, at least mention the podcast and tell me your name so I can address you properly. Anyway, I'm here if you need any tech stuff done. I find my life is finally starting to calm down a little bit where I can take on a little bit more work, and I've been able to rest. I slipped a disc in my back early last week, and that hurt so bad I could hardly walk most of last week without being in pain or even breathe because I was in so much pain. But got some muscle relaxers. I'm good now. I'm seeing the chiropractor, that kind of stuff. So everything's good here. But I'm going to do another show, okay? I know I get off topic easy, sorry. I'm going to do another show called Give a Man 50,000 Square Feet. We're talking like a barn dominium, like a big metal building, okay? 50,000 square feet. Make it tall, too. And give him 60 years. And watch how fast at 60 years and how much space is left. From birth to 60 years old, it'll be full. Now, maybe if there's intentional living and optimized space and everything like that, it could be a homeless shelter. It could be a number of different things. But in our society, the default, we always seem to go back to default sometimes, especially when we try something new. We go back to default. That's what happens. The love is not in your stuff. The love is in your heart. It's the people that you love, not the money and stuff, that make you a rich man. Thank you guys so much for watching, reading, and listening. really appreciate the time you spent with me today, and I hope you got something out of this. Again, please send me your email. Find me at Business with Dustin, at Dustin's Projects. And God bless your day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to The Empowered Life with Dustin Vaughn Warncke. To learn more about Dustin, please visit his creator hub at dustinsprojects.com. Warncke Enterprises, Dustin's very own digital services company, can be found at businesswithdustin.com, and his books are available at either website or at dustinsbooks.com. Audio presentations of each of Dustin's latest books can be found on YouTube and streamed at no cost. Please subscribe to the Empowered Life podcast on your favorite podcast app, and thank you for your support and sharing this show with a friend.